Tyler Grant was having the worst day of his life, and it was barely noon. His repair shop on Trading Station Vega 7 was 3 months behind on rent. The station manager had stopped by that morning with another final warning, the fourth one this month. His parts supplier had cut him off until he paid his overdue balance. And to top it all off, he just burned his hand on a faulty plasma coil while trying to fix a cargo hauler's navigation system. Tyler sat in his tiny shop, surrounded by broken equipment and half-finished repairs, seriously considering just packing up and heading back to Earth. Maybe his brother was right. Maybe trying to run a human repair business on an alien trade station was a stupid idea. The problem was simple. Nobody trusted human mechanics. Humans were still the new kids in the galaxy. Only 200 years of space travel compared to species that had been flying between stars for thousands of years. When aliens needed repairs, they went to their own kind. Why risk your expensive ship with some human who barely understood the technology? Tyler ran his burned hand under cold water from the small sink in the corner of his shop. The pain was sharp and immediate, cutting through his frustration. He'd been on this station for 2 years, barely scraping by, living off instant meals and hope. His savings from Earth were long gone. His equipment was second-hand at best. And his customer base consisted of maybe 5 regular clients who couldn't afford the fancy alien repair shops. He looked around his shop with tired eyes. It was barely larger than a storage closet. 1 workbench, 1 tool rack, boxes of salvaged parts stacked against the walls. The sign outside read Grant's Repairs, all species welcome in 3 different languages. He'd been so optimistic when he'd painted that sign. So sure he could make it work. Now he was just tired. Tyler wrapped his burned hand in a clean cloth and sat down heavily on his work stool. Maybe he should call his brother. Admit defeat. Go back to Earth and get a normal job fixing normal human equipment. At least on Earth, people actually hired him. That's when he heard it. At first, Tyler thought it was some kind of alarm. A high-pitched sound, almost musical but filled with so much sadness it made his chest ache. He tilted his head, listening. No, not an alarm. Something else. Something that sounded almost like crying. Tyler stood up and walked to his shop door. The moment he opened it, the sound got louder. It was definitely crying. He stepped out into the main corridor of the trading station. The hallway was busy like always. Trading Station Vega 7 never really slept. Aliens of every description moved through the corridors at all hours. Tyler had gotten used to the constant flow of beings so different from himself. Tall ones, short ones, ones with fur, ones with scales, ones that didn't seem to have any solid form at all. The galaxy was full of diversity, and most of it passed through stations like this. But right now, all those diverse beings were doing the same thing. They were walking quickly past something on the floor, deliberately not looking at it. Tyler pushed through the crowd, muttering apologies when he bumped into a large insectoid alien. He finally saw what everyone was avoiding. A small creature sat in the middle of the corridor, making that heartbreaking crying sound. It was maybe the size of a large house cat, with scales that shimmered and changed colors in the light. Blues and purples and greens all swirling together like oil on water. It had tiny wings folded against its back, small horn nubs on its head, and a long thin tail wrapped around its feet. But what really struck Tyler were the eyes. They were enormous, golden, and filled with tears that caught the light as they rolled down the creature's scaled cheeks. The small being clutched something in its clawed hands. Tyler couldn't see it clearly from where he stood, but it looked broken. Pieces of something held together desperately. Tyler watched as a tall, elegant alien in flowing robes approached. The alien glanced down at the crying creature, then quickly looked away and walked faster. A moment later, a group of short, furry beings did the same thing. Look, avoid, hurry past. Nobody was stopping. Nobody was helping. Tyler looked at the small creature. It was looking up at the passing aliens with those huge, tear-filled eyes. Looking at them like it was hoping, praying, that someone would care. But everyone just kept walking. The creature's crying got louder, more desperate. It held up the broken thing in its hands toward a passing alien, like it was asking for help. The alien didn't even slow down. Tyler felt something twist in his chest. He thought about his own worst days. Days when he'd needed help and nobody had cared. Days when he'd felt small and alone and invisible. Days just like today, actually. He looked around at all the aliens hurrying past. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds passing through this corridor every hour. And not one of them was stopping to help a crying child. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? A child. Small, scared, and alone. Tyler made a decision. He walked over to the small creature and knelt down on the corridor floor. Up close, he could see that its scales were incredibly detailed, each one like a tiny jewel. The wings, though folded, had delicate patterns that reminded him of stained glass. "Hey there," Tyler said softly. "What's wrong, little one?" The creature's head snapped up. The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a small hiccup of surprise. Those golden eyes stared at Tyler like the creature couldn't quite believe someone had actually stopped. Tyler held out his hand slowly, palm up, the same way he'd approach a scared dog back on Earth. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help. Can you show me what's wrong?" The creature looked at Tyler's hand. Then at his face. Then back at his hand. Slowly, carefully, it reached out and placed one small clawed hand on Tyler's palm. The scales felt warm and smooth, like sun-heated stone. Then the creature held up what it was clutching. Tyler could see it clearly now. It was a mechanical device of some kind, broken into several pieces. The craftsmanship was incredible. It seemed to be made from crystalline materials that glowed faintly from within. Even broken, it was beautiful. "You broke your toy?" Tyler asked gently. The creature made a small sound, somewhere between a chirp and a whimper. It nodded its small head. "Okay. That's all right. Accidents happen." Tyler looked at the pieces more carefully. This wasn't just some cheap toy. This was expensive. Really, really expensive. The kind of thing that cost more than Tyler made in a year. He should probably just find this kid's parents and hand it over. Let them deal with it. He had enough problems without getting involved. But those golden eyes were still looking at him. Hopeful now. Trusting. Like Tyler was the answer to a prayer. Tyler sighed. He was probably going to regret this. "Come on," he said, standing up. "Let's go to my shop. I'll see if I can fix it for you." The creature's eyes went even wider. It made a questioning chirp. "Yeah, I mean it. Come with me." The small creature stood up on wobbly hind legs and followed Tyler toward his shop, staying close to his legs. It looked up at him every few seconds, like it was afraid he might disappear. Tyler didn't know he was being watched. Didn't know that cameras were recording every second. Didn't know that somewhere above, an emperor sat on a throne and smiled. Tyler's shop was a mess. He knew it. His customers knew it. But it was organized chaos. He knew where everything was, even if nobody else could make sense of it. The small creature looked around with wide eyes, taking in the piles of parts, the workbenches covered in tools, the half-assembled equipment scattered everywhere. It made a soft cooing sound that Tyler interpreted as curiosity. "Yeah, I know it's not much," Tyler said, clearing off his main workbench. "But it's home. Come here, let me get a better look at what we're working with." He gently lifted the small creature and set it on a stool next to his workbench. It didn't resist, just settled onto the seat and watched him with those huge golden eyes. Tyler carefully took the broken pieces from its claws and laid them out under his brightest work light. Now that he could really examine them, Tyler's stomach sank a little. This wasn't just expensive. This was art. The kind of craftsmanship that took years to master. Maybe decades. The main body of the device was made from some kind of crystalline metal he'd never seen before. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive. Inside, he could see circuits that weren't just attached to the structure, they were woven into it, part of the material itself. The connections were impossibly delicate, thinner than human hair. The power cells glowed with a soft inner light even though they were clearly damaged. "Okay," Tyler said, more to himself than to the creature. "This is way beyond my skill level. But we're going to try anyway." The creature tilted its head, making a soft questioning sound. "Don't worry. I'm good at figuring things out. At least, I used to be." Tyler pulled over his analysis scanner, a beat-up piece of equipment he'd bought third-hand from a merchant who'd been desperate for cash. He ran it over the broken pieces. The readings that came back made no sense. The materials weren't in any database he had access to. The power signature didn't match any known technology he'd studied. The internal structure seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at it. Tyler leaned back and rubbed his face with his good hand. The burned one still throbbed, but he ignored it. He'd worked through worse. "All right, little one. Here's the truth. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I've never seen anything like this before. But you know what? That's never stopped me." The creature cooed softly, still watching him. Tyler pulled the pieces closer and really looked at them. Not at what they were made of or how they were supposed to work. Just at what was broken and what needed to be fixed. That's how his dad had taught him back on Earth. Don't get overwhelmed by the whole problem. Just look at what's actually wrong. See this piece here? Tyler pointed to a severed connection between two crystalline components. This used to connect to this part. I can see where it broke. There's stress marks, discoloration. So if I can just bridge this gap somehow. The problem was he didn't have the right materials. He didn't even know what the right materials would be. Everything in his shop was designed for standard galactic technology, not whatever advanced system this was. But Tyler had learned a long time ago that you don't always need the right tool. Sometimes you just need the right idea. He started digging through his parts bins. Boxes and containers stuffed with salvaged components, broken equipment he'd never gotten around to properly cataloging, pieces and parts he'd bought cheap because nobody else wanted them. His fingers found something interesting. A piece of quantum fiber cabling from a crashed probe he'd salvaged last month. It was meant for completely different applications, but the principle was the same, conducting energy through flexible connections. The fiber was incredibly thin, incredibly strong, and could adapt to different power frequencies. This might work, Tyler muttered. He pulled out several strands of the fiber, each one barely visible in the light. It's not the same material, but if I weave them together like this. He worked slowly, carefully. His fingers moved with practiced precision, even the burned one. Years of training, of fixing broken things with whatever he had available. His dad used to say that being a good mechanic wasn't about having the best tools, it was about making any tool work. The small creature watched intently, its head moving to follow Tyler's hands. Occasionally it made soft sounds, and Tyler found himself responding. Yeah, I know it looks weird. But trust me, I fixed weirder things. Once I had to repair a Trevany cargo hauler using nothing but duct tape and prayer. Well, we don't call it duct tape, but you get the idea. Hours passed. Tyler didn't notice. He was in that mental space where nothing existed except the problem in front of him. The rest of the world, his debts, his failures, his burned hand, all faded away. There was only the puzzle of making broken things whole again. The creature had stopped making sounds. It sat perfectly still on the stool, watching. Waiting. Trusting that this strange human could do what he'd promised. Tyler examined the main power cell. It was cracked, but not completely broken. The containment field inside was still holding, which meant there was hope. He applied a bonding agent he'd mixed himself from 3 different adhesives. It wasn't standard procedure, the manufacturers would probably have a heart attack if they saw what he was doing, but it would work. He was almost certain. The trick, Tyler said, carefully applying the mixture, is understanding that things don't have to be perfect. They just have to work. Sometimes the best repair is the one that gets the job done, even if it's not pretty. He reinforced the cracked casing with thin strips of metal mesh, wrapping them carefully around the weak points. Then he reconnected the severed circuits using his improvised quantum fiber bridges. Each connection had to be perfect. Too loose and the energy wouldn't flow. Too tight and the delicate components would break. Tyler's hands moved with confidence now. He could feel it coming together. Could see how the pieces wanted to fit, how the energy wanted to flow. It was like the device itself was teaching him how to fix it. Okay, he said finally, setting down his tools. Moment of truth. He carefully aligned the final components, holding his breath as he made the last connection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device hummed to life. Soft light began to glow from within the crystalline structure. Colors swirled and danced, blues and purples and golds shifting and blending. Then came the sound. Music, if you could call it that. Like wind chimes made of crystal, mixed with sounds that reminded Tyler of birdsong and running water. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. The small creature made a sound Tyler hadn't heard before. A happy, trilling noise that went up and down like laughter. It bounced on the stool, its tiny wings fluttering with excitement. We did it. Tyler grinned, holding out the repaired device. Look at that. Good as new. Well, mostly. I had to improvise some parts, but it should work fine. The creature took the device in its small claws, clutching it to its chest. Those golden eyes looked up at Tyler, and if he didn't know better, he'd swear the little thing was smiling. Then everything changed. His shop door burst open, and Tyler's life got a lot more complicated. Tyler made the final connection and held his breath. The device suddenly hummed to life in his hands. Soft, colorful light began to glow from within the crystalline structure, shifting through blues and purples and golds. Then it started playing music, if you could call it that. It sounded like wind chimes made of crystal, mixed with sounds that reminded Tyler of birdsong and flowing water all at once. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. The small creature made a sound Tyler hadn't heard before, a happy, trilling chirp that went up and down like laughter. It bounced excitedly on the stool, its tiny wings fluttering so fast they blurred. The little thing reached out with both claws, taking the repaired device and clutching it to its chest like a precious treasure. "There you go, buddy," Tyler said, grinning despite his exhaustion. "Good as new." "Well, mostly new. I had to get creative with some of the internal parts, but it should work just fine now." The creature looked up at Tyler with those enormous golden eyes. Then, without warning, it launched itself forward and wrapped its small arms around Tyler's neck in what could only be described as a hug. Tyler froze for a second, surprised, then carefully patted the creature's scaled back. Okay. You're welcome. Really, it was no big deal." That's when his shop door exploded inward. Not literally exploded, but it slammed open with such force that it banged against the wall hard enough to rattle tools off their hooks. Tyler jumped back, instinctively putting himself between the small creature and whatever was coming through his door. 6 massive figures filled the doorway, each one so large they had to duck and turn sideways to fit through the entrance meant for human-sized customers. They were easily 7 feet tall, maybe more, with scales that looked like polished gemstones. One had scales of deep emerald green that caught the light and threw back rainbow reflections. Another had scales like rubies, deep red with hints of orange fire. A third was covered in sapphire blue scales that seemed to glow from within. They had wings folded tightly against their backs, long tails that swished behind them with barely contained power, and claws that looked sharp enough to tear through the metal walls of the station. Each one wore armor that appeared to be made from the same crystalline material as the toy Tyler had just fixed. And they all carried weapons, long staffs that hummed with contained energy, making the air around them shimmer. Tyler's mouth went completely dry. His heart started hammering in his chest. He'd seen a lot of different aliens in his 2 years on the station, but he'd never seen anything like this up close. These weren't just aliens. These were warriors. Predators. Beings that could probably tear him apart without breaking a sweat. The lead figure, the one with emerald scales, stepped forward. His eyes were golden like the small creature's, but ancient and fierce. When he spoke, his voice was so deep it seemed to vibrate through Tyler's chest. "You are the human Tyler Grant." Tyler's voice came out embarrassingly squeaky. He cleared his throat and tried again. That's me. Look, if this is about unpaid fees or the incident with the cargo bay last month, I can explain. You will come with us." It wasn't a request. Immediately. "The Emperor wishes to speak with you." Tyler's brain stuttered to a complete stop. The Emperor? What Emperor? I don't know any emperors. I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. I don't even know what species you are. You have been in the presence of Prince Roth, Crown Prince of the Draconian Empire. The emerald-scaled guard's eyes flicked to the small creature peeking out from behind Tyler's leg. You touched royal property without authorization. You handled a priceless royal heirloom. This is a matter of extreme seriousness. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Tyler looked down at the small creature, at Prince Roth, who chirped nervously and pressed closer to Tyler's leg, still clutching his repaired toy. "Crown Prince." Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. "This is the Crown Prince of an entire empire." "You did not know." The guard sounded genuinely surprised. "No. I didn't know." He was crying in the hallway. Everyone was walking past him. He was alone and scared and I just wanted to help. Tyler ran his good hand through his hair, panic rising in his chest. "I didn't touch royal property. I fixed a kid's broken toy. That's all. Just a toy." "That toy is a royal heirloom crafted by Master Artisan Korvax 300 years ago. It has been passed down through the royal family for generations. Its value exceeds that of most small planets." Tyler felt his knees go weak. "Oh no. Oh no. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? There was just a crying kid, and nobody was helping, and I." "You will explain this to His Majesty." The guard gestured toward the door. "Now. You will come with us." "Am I under arrest?" Tyler's voice cracked on the last word. The guard's expression was unreadable. "That will be determined by Emperor Vrax. Gather nothing. Bring nothing. You will come as you are." 2 of the other guards moved to flank Tyler. They didn't touch him, but they didn't need to. Their presence alone made it clear that refusing wasn't an option. Tyler looked around his shop, his messy, chaotic, barely profitable shop that he'd been on the verge of abandoning just a few hours ago. He'd thought today couldn't get any worse. He'd been wrong. So very, very wrong. Prince Roth made a distressed sound and tugged on Tyler's pant leg with one small claw. Tyler looked down at those huge golden eyes, now filled with worry instead of joy. "It's okay," Tyler lied, trying to sound calm even though his hands were shaking. "I'm sure this is just a big misunderstanding. Everything will be fine." He really hoped that was true. The guards escorted him out of his shop and into the corridor. Aliens scattered out of their way, pressing themselves against the walls. Tyler could hear the whispers starting, could see the stares. Everyone knew something big was happening. Everyone was watching the human being taken away by draconian Imperial guards. Tyler had wanted to make a name for himself on this station. He'd wanted people to notice him, to take him seriously, to see him as more than just another struggling human trying to survive in alien space. "Be careful what you wish for," he thought miserably as the guards marched him toward the docking bays. Tyler didn't know what to say. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but no words came out. Emperor Vrax watched him with those ancient, knowing eyes. "I don't understand," Tyler finally managed. "Why is that? Why does that matter?" The Emperor leaned forward slightly. "The Draconian Empire has existed for over 6,000 of your Earth years. In that time, we have learned much about the nature of sentient beings. We have fought wars, made alliances, studied countless civilizations. And through it all, we have held to one fundamental truth: the measure of a person's character is shown not in how they treat the powerful, but in how they treat the helpless." He gestured to Prince Roth, who was perched happily on his father's massive shoulder, still clutching his repaired toy. "My son is the heir to an empire that spans 300 star systems. When he reaches his adult form, he will be larger than you, stronger than you, capable of feats your species can barely imagine. But right now, in his hatchling form, he is small, vulnerable, defenseless." The Emperor's voice grew softer but more intense. "And you saw him crying in a corridor, alone and frightened, and you stopped. You knelt down to his level. You spoke to him with gentleness and respect. You brought him to your place of work and spent 6 hours repairing something precious to him, asking for nothing in return." Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "But anyone would have done that. He's just a kid. Of course I helped. The recordings say otherwise." The Emperor waved his massive clawed hand, and holographic displays appeared throughout the throne room. They showed the station corridor. Showed aliens walking past the crying Prince Roth. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. All avoiding him. All pretending not to see. Tyler watched the footage with growing disbelief. He saw himself appear on the screen, stopping, kneeling down. Saw himself talking gently to the small prince. The contrast was stark, every other being walking past, one human stopping to help. 347 beings passed my son in that corridor over the course of 23 minutes, Emperor Vrax said. Some glanced at him and hurried away. Others deliberately looked in different directions. A few even stepped around him as if he were an obstacle in their path. 346 sentient beings saw a distressed child and chose to do nothing. The Emperor's golden eyes locked onto Tyler. You were number 347. And you were the only one who stopped. Tyler felt his throat tighten. He remembered that moment, remembered thinking how awful it was that nobody was helping. He'd thought it was strange, but he'd been too focused on the crying child to really process what it meant. Why? Tyler asked. Why didn't anyone help him? Was it because they knew he was royalty? Were they afraid? Some, perhaps. But most? The Emperor shook his massive head. They simply did not care. A small creature that was not their species, not their problem, not their concern. This is the reality of galactic civilization, Tyler Grant. For all our advancement, for all our technology and knowledge, most beings cannot be bothered to help someone who needs it. Another display appeared, showing different footage. This time it showed Tyler in his shop, working on the toy. Hours of footage, sped up. Tyler watched himself carefully reconstructing the broken device, his face locked in concentration. But what you did next was even more remarkable, the Emperor continued. A new figure appeared in the throne room, a female draconian with scales the color of burnished copper, wearing robes marked with intricate symbols. This is Master Craftsman Kalora. She has spent 120 of your Earth years perfecting her craft. She is considered the finest engineer in the Draconian Empire. Kalora, please share your analysis. The engineer bowed to the Emperor, then turned to study Tyler with intense curiosity. When she spoke, her voice was rich and musical. I examined the Crown Prince's heirloom after it was returned. The repair work is extraordinary. The human used materials that should not function together. Techniques that violate every principle of draconian engineering. Connections that should have failed immediately. She pulled up a three-dimensional holographic schematic of the toy's internal structure, rotating it slowly. And yet it works. Perfectly. Better than perfectly, in fact. The improvised components actually improved the resonance frequency by 3.2%. The power distribution is more efficient than the original design by master artisan Korvax. Tyler stared at the schematic, barely understanding what he was seeing. What? I was just trying to fix it. I didn't mean to improve anything. I didn't even know what I was doing, not really. That is precisely what makes it remarkable, Kalora said, and there was genuine wonder in her voice. Our engineers train for decades to learn the proper techniques. We study the masters, learn the correct methods, follow established protocols. When faced with unknown materials or unfamiliar technology, we research. We consult. We follow procedure. She gestured at the holographic display. You had none of that. No training in our techniques. No knowledge of our materials. No reference guides or master craftsmen to consult. You simply looked at a broken object and figured out how to fix it using whatever you had available. I didn't have a choice, Tyler said. I didn't know the right way to do it, so I just did what made sense. Exactly, Emperor Vrax said, and there was satisfaction in his deep voice. You demonstrate a quality that we Draconians often lack, pure, creative problem-solving. The ability to see solutions where we see only obstacles. To make connections we would never consider. To succeed where we would declare the task impossible. The Emperor stood from his throne, his massive form unfolding with fluid grace. He descended the crystal steps until he stood directly before Tyler, towering over him but somehow not threatening. Up close, Tyler could see the incredible detail in his scales, each one like a perfect piece of midnight sky shot through with silver stars. Tyler Grant of Earth, the Emperor said formally, you have shown exceptional character. You helped my son when no one else would. You repaired a priceless artifact with skill that surpasses our finest craftsmen. You asked for nothing. Expected nothing. You simply saw someone in need and helped because it was the right thing to do. He placed one massive clawed hand on Tyler's shoulder. The gesture was gentle despite the obvious power behind it. For this, you have earned the gratitude of the Draconian Empire and the friendship of my son. These are not small things. Prince Roth made a happy chirping sound and flew down from his father's shoulder to land on Tyler's. The small prince nuzzled against Tyler's cheek, making contented sounds. Tyler stood frozen, overwhelmed. This morning he'd been 3 months behind on rent, ready to give up and go home. Now he was standing in front of an emperor, being thanked for fixing a kid's toy. His life had just gotten very, very complicated. 3 months later, Tyler stood in his shop on Trading Station Vega 7 and barely recognized it. The place had been completely renovated. The station manager, who'd been threatening to evict him, had personally overseen the expansion. His tiny repair shop now took up 3 times the space, with proper equipment, organized storage, and even a small waiting area. The Imperial protection seal displayed on the door ensured that nobody bothered him about rent anymore. Not that Tyler was there much these days. His apprentice, a young woman named Beth Morris from Earth, ran the day-to-day operations now. She'd been working on cargo ships in the outer sectors and had jumped at the chance to learn from someone who'd been personally trained by Draconian master craftsmen. Tyler had been hesitant at first about hiring someone, but the Emperor had insisted. Your knowledge is too valuable to remain with only one person, Vrax had said. Beth looked up from the engine component she was calibrating when Tyler walked in. Hey, boss. How was the homeworld? Incredible, Tyler said, setting down his travel bag. Prince Roth is growing fast. He's almost twice the size he was last month. And he's getting really good at engineering. Built a working power converter yesterday. Did it explode this time? Tyler grinned. Only a little bit. He's learning. The shop's waiting area was full, as usual. A Trevany captain sat reading something on a datapad. 2 Vorkan traders were having a quiet conversation in the corner. A crystalline shardborn rotated slowly, its internal light pulsing with patience. They were all waiting for repairs, all willing to wait because Tyler Grant's shop had become one of the most respected on the station. Word had spread fast after the incident with Prince Roth. The human mechanic who'd impressed the Emperor. The guy who could fix anything, who'd been given Draconian citizenship and trained in their ancient techniques. Suddenly, everyone wanted Tyler to work on their ships and equipment. Beth handed him a datapad showing the schedule. We're booked solid for the next month. Captain Vrel wants you to personally check his ship's navigation system. The Canthery delegation requested a consultation about their communication relay. And we got 3 more applications from human engineers who want to apprentice here. Tyler scrolled through the list, shaking his head in amazement. 3 months ago, he'd had maybe 5 customers total. Now he had a waiting list. His communicator chimed. The holographic display showed Prince Roth, now about the size of a large dog. His scales had deepened to a rich royal blue, and his wings had grown large enough for short flights. The young prince's face lit up when he saw Tyler. Tyler, look what I made. Roth held up a small device that hummed with energy. It's a micropower generator, like you showed me. I used the improvisation technique. That's amazing, Roth. Is it stable? Yes. I tested it 3 times. Father says I am learning human creativity. The prince's voice was filled with pride. When you come back next week, I want to show you my new project. I am building a communication device that works in jump space. That's impossible, Tyler said automatically, then caught himself. Wait, that's what they said about fixing your toy too. Show me what you've got so far. After the call ended, Beth was watching him with an odd expression. You know what's crazy? You're teaching the future emperor of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. That kid is going to rule 300 star systems someday. He's just a kid who likes building things, Tyler said, but he knew what she meant. The implications of what was happening were huge. The Draconian Empire had started recruiting human engineers. Not many, they were extremely selective, but enough to start a real exchange of knowledge. Humans learned Draconian mastercrafting techniques, methods perfected over thousands of years. Draconians learned human improvisation, creativity, and problem-solving. Dr. Patricia Cole, a xenosociologist from Earth, had published a paper about it. Tyler had been interviewed for the research, though he'd found the whole thing embarrassing. The paper was titled The Vega 7 Incident: How Human Compassion Bridged 2 Civilizations. What Tyler Grant demonstrated, Dr. Cole had written, was a fundamental aspect of human nature that we often take for granted. Our instinct to help those in distress, regardless of species or circumstance. While many galactic civilizations value strength, honor, and power above all else, humans evolved as social creatures who survive through cooperation and mutual aid. We help because it's who we are. The paper had caused quite a stir in academic circles. Other researchers started studying human behavior patterns, trying to understand why humans acted in ways that other species considered illogical or even foolish. Helping strangers. Taking risks for others. Persisting at tasks that seemed impossible. Tyler's brother had sent him a message last week. Mom showed your picture to everyone at her book club. Dad's telling all his customers about his son who's friends with alien royalty. I'm proud of you, little brother. You proved that being a good person matters more than being a rich person. Tyler had saved that message. Read it whenever he felt overwhelmed by everything that had happened. A notification appeared on his workstation. An official communication from the Draconian Imperial Palace. Tyler opened it and felt his eyes go wide. Tyler Grant, you are hereby invited to the Festival of Lights on the Draconian homeworld. His Majesty Emperor Vrax wishes to present you with the Star of Merit, the highest civilian honor in the Draconian Empire. The ceremony will take place in 3 weeks. Your presence is requested. Beth read over his shoulder and whistled. The Star of Merit? That's huge. They don't give that to just anyone. I just fixed a kid's toy, Tyler said quietly. No, Beth corrected. You saw someone who needed help and you helped them. You treated an alien prince like he was just a scared kid who needed a hand. You spent hours fixing something that was important to him, not because you knew who he was, but because you cared. She gestured around the transformed shop. Look what happened because of that. You changed your life. You changed how the Draconian Empire sees humans. You started a cultural exchange program that's bringing 2 civilizations closer together. All because you stopped to help. Tyler looked around his shop. At the new equipment. At the customers waiting patiently. At Beth, who was learning skills that would serve her for the rest of her life. At the datapad showing messages from other humans who wanted to learn, to grow, to be part of something bigger. He thought about Prince Roth, growing and learning, building impossible things because a human had shown him that impossible just meant no one had figured it out yet. He thought about that day 3 months ago. The worst day of his life. The day he'd been ready to give up and go home. The day he'd heard a child crying and made the simple choice to see what was wrong. I guess kindness matters, Tyler said softly. In this galaxy? Beth smiled. Apparently it matters more than anyone realized.